the end result is what's best for children. So that kept me grounded. So hopefully you can take this, kind of look at this sheet and see some of the things that you may want to consider as you implement what Dr. Hines is doing.
The other piece, she mentioned herself as a leader, she mentioned the leadership team, but also having change agents. And some of those change agents are obviously on your leadership team. Some of those are going to be the teacher leaders that are in here. But you need to seek out those people in your school that have total buy-in, and they need to be a part of that, a part of those conversations in the lounge, a part of those conversations on the phone at night when they're talking. That was really a critical point for us. I think we had just several people who really believed in this, who really saw what a difference it can make, who saw the need. And we all just had conversations, and that's what Ms. Turner's going to talk about.
And as we had those discussions, we really had to trust each other. We had to establish the trust among our staff that, you know, if that person had a bias, they were able to come to us, those change agents, and really be honest. Because we can't make change without being honest and being able to identify what our particular problems are. And if I can't trust that person, then I'm not going to be honest with them. I mean, and we discussed it with Dr. Hines, and Dr. Hines pulled in our leadership team initially, and he worked with our leadership team to really get them involved in working with the staff, the total staff. After working with the staff, the whole group, we had one session that we actually went off campus, which I thought was great because everyone felt kind of at ease and they didn't feel the tension of being in school. We worked on really finding what our balance was, what our biases were in identifying it and really having that conversation. Then, after working with the whole group, he had a parent focus group. And no teachers were invited. No staff was invited to that parent focus group. It was Dr. Hines and the parents. He talked to them. He wanted to know their perspective on the discipline of their children, and they reported it. After looking at it as a leadership team, it was profound for us because we had never really saw it from a parent's perception. And so it really opened our eyes and made us it really put us in the parent's role. Like if that was our child, what would we do? And what could we do differently to ensure that those parents felt comfortable sending their kids to our school? And then we worked in small groups. He worked with small groups with some teachers that had a difficult time conforming or really having a hard time really seeing what their biases were, identifying them. And he worked with them via email. They called him, as Dr. Walker said. And then one-on-one, he would come to the school and really just pull that teacher to have that discussion with them, to let them know that we were all on the same team. And that team is to ensure that every student has, that student impact was being addressed. And that was our focus. He also had one-on-one with students. We had some students that were having very difficult times, and it was almost as if no one in the building could reach that student. And he would call, he would have a conversation with them over the phone. When he came into town, he would have that, he would see them. So all that being said, then after we did the discussion piece, we had to go to reflection.
And I think that was really our turning point. Before in our previous slides, we were talking about how we were looking outward. We were trying to figure out what the problem was. I think it was when we really turned inward and began to reflect on ourselves. We had, a self-awareness. And it began with some of our trainings. I've been to a couple of the trainings at the end of the year, and some of the strategies that he used and some of the activities were similar to what we had. But I just feel like that was kind of the turning point, especially for me. And as many of you may have been raised as white people, and that's the other thing I learned to say. It's okay to say white people and black people. Like, I didn't think that was okay until I went through his training. I thought that was offensive. And he said, well, you're white and I'm white, right? And I said, yeah. So as a white teacher, when we had conversations, when I was talking to other white teachers, a lot of people said, well, we're all the same, right? We're all Americans. We're all from the United States. Why do we have to, why is it different? It's not different. We're all the same. And then we even go back to how we were raised. And I was raised that we're all the same. My mother taught me to treat everybody the same. We're not different, we're all the same. That's been ingrained in my mind for a long time. And through this training, I discovered we're not the same. We're different. And that is okay. It's okay to be different. And I think for me and for several other people on our team, that was kind of the moment where we realized this isn't just about focusing on black kids because the black kids have the higher discipline rate at our school. This is about focusing on black students because they're different than we are, and we've got to address their needs maybe a little bit differently. And so I just feel like for me that was just a major turning point. I don't know if I'm going to ruin one of your activities that you did, but I feel like I really need to share when we had one of our big groups. This was the aha moment for me. When we had one of our big groups, he said, okay, I want all the white teachers on this side of the room. I want all the black teachers on this side of the room. I want you to come up with how you guys are the same as white teachers and what you have in common as black teachers. And so we all broke up, and in about 3 minutes, the black teachers were done, and they have their posters hanging up on the wall. And all the white teachers were over here going, about to duke it out. We couldn't find any commonalities among ourselves as a race. So let me explain that, because I know you're looking at me like that doesn't make sense. Well, we can find, as a white culture, I discovered, we can find commonalities. If you're a mother, I have things in common with you. But I don't have anything in common with somebody who lives in New Jersey, unless she's a mother, unless she's a teacher, unless she is a Southern Baptist, like my little circle. So all of the white teachers, we all had different circles, so we couldn't really come up with one thing that made us the same. And we looked over to the black teachers. They had, I can't remember now what they had, but they had
actually had
you remember, that's
religion was a focus for all of us. Trust was really important for African Americans or black people, and the other one was history. The history piece. You know, our history is very important to us, and we have to feel like our history is valued.
And so that for me was the moment when I think a lot of us realize it is a different culture. Yeah, we're all Americans. We're all from the United States, but it is a different culture. It's a different group. It's a different way. It's a different group. And then that's when Dr. Hines said, and different is not a deficit. And that just gave me freedom to see it's okay to say we're different. And so that was kind of the journey for myself. And I think a lot of teachers took that journey as well. And then we began to reflect on our practice. Once we kind of realized this, okay, well, then my African American students, there may need to be different strategies I use on them because they react differently. So that's when we began to focus on our strategies. Dr. Hines gave us lots of strategies. We focused on engagement. We did walkthroughs. We walked through to see our African American students engaged. If not, why not? Well, maybe because we're not moving. Maybe we're not doing some of those things that target their learning style. And then we began to focus on our students. We began to look in their faces and say, what can I do to meet that student where they're at? What can I do to build a relationship with that student? What can I do to meet their needs? What can I do to connect? And we really began to see that that was a very important factor that we felt like was missing. And so we focused on those three things: on self, on practice, and on students.
At the end of our, well, and it's not the end, but at the end of that particular year, we felt like we not only the students, but our staff, we were shining like a diamond.
And we're not going to read all of these things to you. You can kind of I'll give you just a minute to kind of look at some of the things that we felt like were key to that, but we're each going to pick a couple. I feel like the things that really enabled us to help ourselves begin to shine like a diamond. We weren't that circle anymore. We weren't the circle of confusion. We had triangulated, and now we're diamonds, and our students were diamonds. And some of the things, the two things I want to talk about specifically was just the culture of trust among the building. Just the whole feel of our staff had changed. As Ms. Turner spoke earlier, we began to have conversations. We talked about race. It was just more comfortable. We talked about our students. We were able to say, you know, I'm not connecting with this student. What can I do? And that trust factor was there. I wasn't afraid to say I'm not doing well at this and seek somebody else who could help. So that culture of trust in the building, there was trust among the leadership team, there was trust among our staff. And so our whole building, just the culture of our whole building changed. And the other piece is the accountability factor. And the accountability not only came from the leadership, from Dr. Walker, and she expected it. I mean, we were held accountable. She was walking through the building. She was making notes. She was watching our engagement. She was watching those referral rates. that accountability was there, but also accountability of ourselves to each other. We're not open space anymore, but we were open space, and so we're in everybody's business in open space, and so we could see what was going on, and we could talk to each other. Hey, I saw, so-and-so was really having a hard time. What strategies did you use? Or somebody might say, I can't connect to this student. Do you mind trying to connect with him? And so there was just really that culture of trust, accountability to our leadership, and also to ourselves. One thing that I really remember that was eye-opening for me is there was a situation that happened. Of course, if you're open space, everybody knows when something happens. And it didn't go that well. And Dr. Walker was involved. And it just really didn't go very well. And I just really admired her. She said, she went to that teacher and a couple of people who were kind of involved, and she said, we just need to reflect on this because we did not handle this right. I didn't handle it right. You didn't handle it right. This was not good for our students. What could we have done better? And I think that is the key to realizing change. You have to realize that we can all do better. And that reflection and seeing it come from a leader, I think, trickled down to our staff as well. We found ourselves asking people, what do you think? When people would come, we'd say, well, how do you think you could have done that different? What might you have tried? And that was just, that kind of conversation began to happen all over our building.
And that piggybacks off what I thought was most important, that reflection piece and being aware of yourself. I felt like that was the most important part because we can't change everything, but the one thing we can change is ourselves. And we can change that, we can only change that if we are honest and if we reflect on our practice and on our teaching. And the other thing was that courageous dialogue. It was so hard for some of our teachers to sit down and just be honest with each other. And it was, I had several conversations with Ms. Freeman about things that happened in the school and what we could have done differently. And so because we were able to have that courageous dialogue, I think that was the paradigm shift in our building.
And I also just think that you've got to remember, if change is going to happen, it can't just be change that you're checking the box. Like true transformational change, I really felt like we had at Dupree, it really came from within. And I know as a leader, it's scary to say that because you can't just reach in somebody and just change them. They have to feel it. But we can model it. We can have those change agents. We can have success stories like this. But you've got to feel it. So if you don't have buy-in, from a good handful of your staff, it's going to be difficult because you've got to feel that from within to really truly want that change.
And this was the process that we went through. We went through the circle of frustration. Our leadership, Dr. Walker had to decide that, she wanted this for our building. And so then we started discussions, and then we started to reflect. Our polished results was a diamond, and it was polished because we were thinking about our actions and our behaviors. And from this part, I wanted to end this presentation with really giving you guys food for thought. And as we begin this year, we often start our year off on a run because we're having so many in-services. It's hard to, we got a flipping staff, and so it's hard to acclimate everyone every time. But I challenge you guys at the beginning of this year to really take ownership of this process and look at your new teachers and get them engaged in this. I was a mentor last year, and my novice teacher didn't really have an idea of what diversity was. They don't teach that in college. And she her classroom environment kind of sunk because of it. And so I feel like if we can have a recalibration training for our teachers at the beginning, our newer teachers at the beginning of the year, we would set them up for success.
So we encourage you to think about what is your circle of frustration? Where are you? We encourage you to triangulate. What pieces do you need to look at so that you and your staff can shine like diamonds? And it's so important for you teacher leaders because just like Ms. Turner said, Dupree has a lot of new staff members. It's going to be up to this team with these new teacher leaders I mean, Dr. Hines can't come to your building every year and retrain teachers. So it's gonna be up to you teachers